Hi, Bill Edstrom here. Welcome to this video on reamping. I'm going to go over how to do reamping, that is re-recording your guitar part that you've already recorded but running it out to a real tube amp. So if you've recorded a guitar through a guitar simulator and you want to actually now bring that to life by running it through a genuine hardware amplifier, then this is how you do it. And it's how you do it using a PreSonus StudioLive board. In this particular case, it's the 1642AI, but this technique is pretty much the same regardless of which StudioLive board you have. And for the digital audio workstation software, I'm using StudioOne. But the technique works very much the same if you're running Pro Tools, Logic, or any digital audio workstation. So we're going to get started by taking a look at the song itself. There's a little demo tune that I have here that is using Amplifier for the guitar part. Let me just play a little bit of that. All right, so that's gives you a little bit idea of this kind of rock groove. Now, if we take a look at this part here, let's look in the inspector and see what we've got going on with Amplifier. Basically what I want to do is turn Amplifier off. So I'll rewind, we'll turn Amplifier off right here, and then you'll be able to hear what we've got without it. Right, that's what a guitar sounds like if you record it basically with no amp, no effects whatsoever. So you've got a really weak signal directly off the guitar pickups. So what we want to do is run this out to a channel, and I'm going to run it out to channel 16. So I'll return it digitally on channel 16 over here on the board. You see I've already got the D button pushed in. But first I'm going to show you the setup in Song Setup. So in Song Setup, which you can get to by clicking down here on the frequency under Audio I/O, another way to do that is to use Command comma or Control comma on the PC and then click Song Setup down here. And then there's an input and an output setup. So let's take a look at the output setup. Now I'm running the main out to the 2-track in on the board. And so in order to get playback back over here on the board, I basically just push this button in and control the volume of playback right here, and that sends it over to the main. That's just kind of how the board works. You could send it to a pair of channels. I like to do it this way because it keeps the left and the right in balance without me having to mess around with faders. Now my reamp output, I'm going to use a sub out, but first of all I'm going to run it into channel 16 on the board. So right here I've created an output, a mono output, and you do that by basically, if you're doing this from scratch, you'd add the output, name it here, and then select whichever output you want to use. Now the output is not the output on the back of the board, it's basically the output into the channel. So it's kind of relative. So I'm going to remove that and we're just going to go with this. So this is my output and I named it reamp out 16 to keep it clear. And then on the actual guitar channel, I'm going to now run this. Instead of running it to the main, I'm going to run it to that output. So what that does is when I play back, it should run into this channel if I use the digital return. So I'm going to route the digital return in and it'll play it on this channel. So let me just play back and you should be able to hear it if I turn it up. Alright, so far so good. But what we're going to do is, because the channel doesn't have a direct output, but these subs do, I'm going to reroute it to a sub. We're going to use sub 4. So just to be clear here, I'm going to do some labeling. This is my reamp from channel 16, and then I'm going to run it to the sub, which has a hardware output right on the back of the board. And then I can route it there right here. If I select on this channel and reroute it to the sub group, it will go over here, and I'll need to have this turned up. So the sound will come back off of my amp channel in StudioOne into the board. I'm not going to do any fat channel processing. That's all turned off. We're running to the subgroup and to the subgroup out. And then from the subgroup out, I'm running backwards through a direct box. This is a passive direct box. If you run that balanced out into the input of the amp, it tends to sound weak or thin. Radial Engineering makes some great boxes for reamping, but if you happen to have a passive stage box, you can at least get something a little bit better by running backwards. So I'm coming off of the sub out and then into the low Z XLR input on here, and then from this output to my amplifier. So this is basically my guitar cord. This gives me a high impedance output through a transformer. All right, so I'm running from the output of my passive direct box to the input of my amplifier, which is a Princeton recording amp. And my Princeton is one, I don't know if they still make this, but it's one that's got an attenuator in there so I can keep the volume down. So when I play back now, I should be able to hear it through this amp. So let's do that. So let's just talk a little bit about this routing setup. Let me just double check this here. Channel 16 is now routed to sub 4, and then we want to make sure that sub 4, if we select here, is not routed to anything because we want to go out to the back of the board. I'll tweak the amp settings in a minute, but let's just take a look at how we get the sound back off the amplifier. So we've got the SM57 hooked up. That's routed back to input channel 1 where I'm recording the mic. And I wrote SM57 right here, and then we'll control the level right here. We don't have to do anything with this channel because it will then appear back in StudioOne. So it's coming back in here as if we're recording a guitar player playing on this channel. So I don't really have to turn this up because StudioOne will pick up everything coming right off the input of that. So let's just set up a channel in StudioOne to grab that. So I'm going to set up another channel. So we'll set up an audio track mono, and we'll call this reamp guitar. And I don't really necessarily need to solo that, so we'll clear the solo. But what we do want to do is make sure we got the right input on this. So the input is input 1 from the board. And so with that set up, if I go into record, you can see I'm picking up sound from the microphone. If we solo right here, everything you're hearing there is coming directly off that amplifier. So I'm going to play back a little bit. I'll tweak the settings on the amp, and then we'll be ready to record. All right, so I adjusted the settings. You can see that in this setup, the sub-out fader controls the level to the amplifier. So this becomes important for adjusting the gain driving into the amplifier, and that's actually driving into my backwards direct box here. And with that set up, we can now just basically record like normal. So I'll rewind over here in StudioOne, and I will just hit record and sit back as it does it. All right, so that was my reamping. After I've done that, then I can mute the original guitar signal, turn off record on this. If it's into the record takes to layers, then you can turn off the expand layers. And now we're ready to mix this back in with our tune. And if we want to bring that volume up a little bit, we can just do this clip gain or event gain. Now, a really cool thing to do is to put it in loop record and then tweak the settings on the amp as it goes through the loop, so you get a variety of choices that you can either comp together or just pick the best take when you're done. When I'm actually recording the parts originally, I use the guitar interface. This is the PRS Waves guitar interface, which gives me a proper high impedance input to the mixer. Motu and others make something that's kind of similar to this. I've had this for a long time and it works great. When you're tracking guitars, kind of use that as a direct box. You could use one of these as well. So I hope that's helpful. That is reamping using StudioLive and StudioOne. Thanks for watching.